the infrastructure for connecting to the internet will be in those communities. And if you do fiber optics, you're future-proofing that. And we've seen homes that would not sell in Queen Anne's County, beautiful waterfront homes, and the person has invested in connecting to quality internet, and the home has sold because of that. So it adds a huge amount to the tax base in the counties for them to be able to sell homes, that otherwise may not be as marketable because of who's looking to buy them. So I don't care what you think, the fact is a lot of our money to spend in schools and services and healthcare and all of that comes from the ability to lift the value of our homes, because for the city and for the county, that's the principal way that we raise money is taxing property. So fiber optics too enables that. So if you have a fiber optic connection in your house, good quality internet, then that person is much more willing to purchase it now. It's a game. If we assist with the maintenance of these bridges, and honestly as a city it's arguable that we should. One, because the Hyatt is a major employer. It's like maybe the third or second after the school system employer in the county. And the homes that would be built there, the return to the city would be far and above more what it would take for us, the nominal investment. So we would essentially be redirecting a portion of what we were getting from the properties back into the maintenance of the bridges. So that's a no-brainer. If it was a loss to us, then it would be a much harder decision. And again, it stems back to the way that I look at all of these things, and sometimes it's hard to translate it directly, but if you invest in the right places, and I'll do the next segue, ARPA money, for example. If you do what's called a force multiplier, where you say, okay, if I put $1 here, it turns into 10 or 20 or 100 or 1,000, that's a good use of the public's money. And that, for example, was the analysis showed that if we assist with this roadway, then that money will be returned to us tenfold, and what we do is just basically push a portion of it back in there, which is what, as a city, we should be doing. We shouldn't be spending too much. There's always a place for things that you don't see an immediate return, I get that. But by and large, if we are to survive as a city, if we are to grow as a city, and when I say grow, I don't mean like in the negative sense of the word, like, oh my God, we're sprawling everywhere and polluting, whatever. I mean growth for our citizens mean building wealth for our locals, investing in infrastructure and sustaining ourselves both environmentally and financially. Those are the things that ultimately we have to do, or else we won't survive. And so that's the way that project should be approached. The state went through and reassessed a lot of properties in Dorchester County this year, and it is a fact. It's the historically low interest rates and historically high home values, and I'm gravely concerned that happened because I've heard stories where people's taxes have gone up, the assessments have gone up by hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is real money that will now, yes, it will go back into the city and state coffers, but yes, it will also be pulled away from people's ability to shop at local restaurants and stores and actually do things that also add to the economy. Just diverting that all to taxes, and in some cases it can be $500, $600 a month in taxes. So not being able to change that, what we have to do as a city is invest that money in a way that people see a value proposition, because there's some very good literature that if people don't feel as though they're getting value for their money, they will move. And I would hate to lose population that has the ability to pay and can actually pump money back into our economy so that we can help everyone. But it's a balance. So, but that's remains to be seen. We have to make sure that we're competitive with our neighboring areas, or we will lose population. Schools have always been the case in point is if people don't feel like they're getting a good value for the school system, they will move. That's just the history of this country. And you know, that's one area that concerns me, that if there's a semi-retired couple or even a young family that you know, wanted to invest in a home, an average size home, and they say, wow, you know, this $500 a month I'm paying in taxes now could go to educating my child, that's a big deal, because that's a lot of money and they will move. And there's people that are rolling that around in their heads right now, I can guarantee you that. So we have to make sure that if we can't do anything about that, we've got to provide value for the dollar. Actually, right across the street here, we've got a predicament where we have a building that, you know, I do want to state emphatically, though, that this building across the street, the Hearne building that is requiring investment, is not the problem with this street. And a lot of people are going to disagree with me. It is symptomatic of years of disinvestment in our city. It didn't cause the problem. It's symptomatic of the problem. And I hope anyone that listens to this understands that. So we have to figure out, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And actually look to correct it. And doubling down on inducing poverty, doubling down on things that are actually holding people in place and not building wealth for them and building wealth for our community is part of what's happened. City Hall was a different scenario where, well, arguably, what happened was we were in the last real estate run-up, from what I understand. We built a new public safety building, and we moved some of our services in there, the police and fire department there. The fire department's trucks have been getting bigger over time, and they were outgrowing their space. You know, the police department, it was a good opportunity to get them out of what is really just a depressing building. It's a bunker. I don't know. I guess it was built that way maybe for safety for the officers, that if there was a nuclear war, they could hide in there. I don't know. There's no windows. I mean, it is just, it's not a place, in my opinion, you want to show up to work. So I say that, and I say that I think, and I don't know this for a fact, but my assumption is it would have been a temporary thing until they could take the building, it's the City Hall, which is in the center of town. And the way cities used to be built is you reserved your prominent real estate, not for the wealthiest person in town, but for civic public institutions. Things with staying power, things that the whole community celebrated and participated in. That building is there. That's where it belongs. It actually is a demonstration of how we feel about our city. And it's expensive, but the idea with City Hall is that we need to do something with that building, because it is at a critical point where it could start crumbling. It's got a lot of remediation that's necessary for it, but in a financially prudent way and in the best interest of our city employees too, who probably would like a window. City Hall right now is, there's not any windows. The city manager's office is essentially, it's like you go in and it's just cinder block on all walls. I mean, so we need to attract and retain good professional employees to implement a lot of these grants and projects and do professional services for the city. One, we need to give them a better place to work. Two, we need to actually demonstrate to our community that we are investing in ourselves. So we need that building restored. It's a beautiful building. It should be restored. The other part is there's a train garden that happens there every year, which has been celebrated for years and years and years. You come, I think there was a traffic study once that showed that there's more traffic on Maryland Avenue than there is on Route 16. I mean, it's just a very busy street. You come right up to this T intersection, and what do you see? And particularly around the holidays, that train garden and the old fire bays. And I've not found a person yet that doesn't wish that those were restored and that area preserved. So that's a piece of it. But yeah, that is a project that started, and of all of my goals, it sounds weird even when I say it out loud to myself, but making that building, stabilizing it, remediating any issues, like if there's asbestos or water leaks or anything like that, we need to do that first. And we need to, in a financially responsible way, start to bring that thing back online. And we can do it, and it's in the best interest of our city to do it, because the longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to be, which if it's more expensive, then it's going to take more money from our local economy and our services and all the things that people expect us to provide if we don't do something now. It is our responsibility, it is our building, and it is prudent to start looking at it now. And with the ARPA money and with being able to offset a lot of the costs of the city, at least for the next 2 years, it's the time now to kind of look into it. So the city manager spearheading the effort. He's got some project managers that are qualified to look at it, and there's some very interested citizens that selflessly would love to help look how we can get at least the customer-facing component of the city. So where you go to pay your bills, or you go to ask questions, or you interact with our city offices right there smack in the middle of town, that we can bring it back in some limited capacity. Again, and in a prudent way, in a financially responsible way, and in a way that actually shows that we're investing back into our own infrastructure. So what we know is that we have a largely gravity-fed sewer system. So it runs from the high parts of town to the low parts. And then from what I understand, and I'm not the engineer on this, then it gets pumped once it hits the other side of the creek out to be treated. What happens is you get heavy rainfall. Everything runs throughout the city. This is a citywide problem. It ends up going to the lowest point, which is the river by design. And if it's too much, then it's just too much for the system to handle, and it just pushes up out of the storm grates. There's probably leakage underground that needs to be repaired as well. So a lot of this will be investigative too. However, that is definitely, and I think it's showing itself in the lowest part of the city, near the river. But the more we work on it, the better. But a lot of what we'll be doing is adding capacity, just to, despite all the other issues, to at least get it over to where it can be treated instead of it just overflowing into the river, which is so critically important for us and for future generations.